Hello and welcome back to the Argyle HR Leadership Forum Tech Check 2022. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle, and just a couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker for this session. For a quick reminder, I want you to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. And our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. To ask questions throughout this session and all sessions today, simply type into the Q&A chat and we'll address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Nick Ionita, Head of Product Strategy and GM at Beamery Grow. Nick, we're so excited to have you with us for your thought leadership presentation titled The Future of Work, Connecting at Workforce Outcomes to Business Outcomes. And over to you.
Thanks for having me. Couple maybe public service announcements. There are 2 poll questions we'll cover kind of during the presentation. So if you could answer now, that would be fantastic. And I have a 1.5-year-old downstairs that is learning how to talk. So there may be some noise in the background. It's cute, but not great for webinars. So thanks for joining us. My name's Nick Ionita. I'm head of product strategy here at Beamery and GM of Grow, which is our internal mobility and career development product. My background's in product management, and I've spent close to the last 15 years scaling very small companies and startups to very large ones. So I wanted to share some of my learnings around internal mobility and what we've learned from those experiences, which have really fed the Grow product and a lot of what we focus on with our clients. So to kick things off here, just a polling question. This is something I love just kind of starting any discussion with, where, basically what are the top challenges of internal mobility within your organization? And a lot of what we hear here in the choices are, visibility of open roles. Do employees know what's there and do managers know who's there? Willingness and support from managers to support the moves. Understanding adjacency skills for new roles. So how does, kind of what I have translate to something else if it's not in my direct career path? And then career mapping takes too much time. So, do we need all this career architecture to be able to provide these experiences to people? And just looking from the polls already, it looks like the highest 47% of responses so far is B, willingness and support from managers to support moves, which is something we hear a lot and something we'll talk about here. I think that's important, which is just getting people to think beyond just their team and the broader company, and actually how healthy programs can actually support helping people make those moves of making sure that the managers who are kind of exporting talent to other teams are also receiving talent from other places. So we'll cover that. Let's start this off just by talking about organizations of the future. So if we were to pick a future state, what does that look like? And I think looking at where we've started, right? People have been conditioned to believe that promotion is the only form of progress. So we spend an incredible amount of time defining career ladders and the associated skill and competency progression that's required to climb them. And while this is important, it doesn't fully support what modern organizations need, right? Job definitions are constantly changing and new roles and skill sets are surfacing all the time. So these architectures that were meant to guide and give structure have become restrictive, even more expensive to constantly update, which is what I think a lot of people underestimate, and usually are only used during performance cycles when we're measuring progression, right? So this thing that's meant to be a tool is really only used for measurement at certain points throughout the year. So, as a result, for employees, it's incredibly difficult to explore anything that's not directly above you, right, in terms of progression or within your line of sight. So you can't become what you can't see. And even if you can see it, there's usually no skill or experience translation for how to get there. So again, hence the questions in the poll earlier. But the reality here is that successful careers are beginning to look more like jungle gyms than ladders, right? Management development programs at large Fortune 500s have known this for a long time, right? Anybody who's kind of read, stories about GE years and years ago, if you're going to become a GM of a business unit, you should probably understand how different parts of the business work. So not just the ladder you've climbed. So how do you manage revenue if you've not been involved in the sales process? So it's easier said than done. Programs focused on this kind of assignment or rotational structure are expensive, they're hard to administrate, and thus they're available to very few. So what do we do about all of this? The good news is it's a pretty low bar, and we can build upon all that career architecture work if it exists, but if it doesn't or only exists in certain places, that's okay. So, the way I think about this, like careers have such an outsized impact on our lives, and most employees want to be self-directed in their advancement. And if we give them the visibility and help them connect the dots, the employees and the business benefit from this. And at this point, 3 years almost into a pandemic, I think we're all, or endemic, whatever it is now at this point, I think we're all tired of the doom and gloom narrative of the Great Resignation. So let's talk about what happens if people stay. So the slide here, these are some recent stats from Beamery's Talent Index, 5th edition. The middle stat here, 58%. People would likely leave the company if they were recruiting externally for a role they were interested, but they weren't considered, right? This is a common story. Again, there's a lot of stats that support this, but let's focus on the positive here. So what we found through polling employees at customers of ours and others throughout the industry is 80% of people are actually likely to stay in the organization if they had better opportunities for internal promotion or sideways moves, right? That's important. This is not just about promotion and stepping up. This is about new opportunities. Sometimes stepping to the side leads to a better and kind of larger step later if we can show that to people. And then there's also a lot of data kind of reinforcing that, the quality of hire is better, right? Like these people you've hired understand the organization, they understand the domain, they know the culture. And what we found is 32% of people of hiring managers are more likely to be satisfied with the quality of new hires when they're promoted internally, right? So these are kind of no-brainer things, but sometimes we need to say them out loud. So what I've kind of learned through this and what we've been really thinking about at Beamery as we, kind of design systems for total talent is there's a symbiotic relationship that exists between retention and recruitment. And there's a lot of benefits, some obvious, some not, that comes from doing retention well. So the obvious is obviously there's fewer ad hoc unplanned hires due to regrettable attrition, right? They're just people leave, those are roles we weren't accounting for, recruiting needing to support, like that goes down. But the things that we've kind of started to understand as we've seen benefits of this are a little more nuanced, right? So career paths emerge between organizations that allow some groups, like let's say customer success and support, to actually act as like farm teams or stem cells into other organizations that may be harder to hire for, like product management or business operations. So that reduces time to hire, time to effectiveness, all of these things, right? Then recruiting can be aimed lower in the organization at roles that can be hired faster and more cost effectively. So over time, some of these teams actually become your talent exporters, and they're the home of some of your best managers who should be rewarded for their employees moving on to other teams, growing and contributing to even bigger things for the organization. And then those employees experiencing all this growth refer others who are high caliber and already bought in, right? There's tons of stats around just quality of hire and everything when companies have healthy referral programs. And then lastly, you've created all these amazing experiences for employees. They're going to talk about these things, and you should too, right? So, successful mobility becomes your employer brand and should be the story you're actually telling on your career site that makes people want to join. And I think this is increasingly important, right? Because the level of talent, there's all this, the war for talent, like, again, this is, I think, a pretty exhausted narrative at this point. But I think it's important to understand, when I think about talent, I think most companies have more competition in terms of companies they're competing against for the talent they're hiring than what their actual core business deals with, right? Like, take a software engineer. You don't need to be a tech, and you don't need to be a tech company to have to hire software engineers. Everybody needs software engineers, so it's competitive. So when I think about all of this, I'd like to use an analogy. So I think about organizations like trees. So we have to bring new employees in through the roots and grow them up into the branches and leaves. There's always going to be a critical hire you need yesterday, or new domain knowledge, gap to fill, and you're going to have to like graft a branch on here or there. But an organization isn't healthy if we're having to graft on all the branches. We need to both feed it and we need to grow it. So that kind of takes us to our next question here. So who takes ownership of internal mobility within the organization? And we've seen, based on kind of the options here, this can live in a lot of different places. Specifically, what we've learned also is depending on how it started within an organization based on priorities. And going off the poll questions is actually interesting because it's kind of a pretty even distribution, but the highest at 34% from people polled here is talent management, which is to be expected. But talent acquisition, learning development are actually tied for second at 20%, and then organizational development or other. And I think just an interesting anecdote for those who are thinking about this, we've actually seen a lot of companies where internal mobility may live in talent acquisition. And a lot of times in high growth companies, usually even the team that's kind of owned, tax and transfers, like moving people globally, ends up getting a larger remit of, okay, well, help people just understand how to make these moves and what moves they can make. And then all of a sudden it starts applying to the entire company. And sometimes this just lives within TA. Also, if, recruitment has a mandate to start looking internally, right? Like we should be able to answer who's here, who can do this anytime we open a new job vacancy up. So to kind of get this to more of an applied set of to-dos here, as we've been building Grow, our internal mobility product, we've seen three key factors in our clients' success. And so this is how I like to think about it. To do this well, you need self-direction by employees, tools enabling that visibility, development, and mobility, and a culture that supports employees in their journey. And you have to have all three to be successful. Each on its own isn't enough. Just, you can have a lot of self-direction and just tell employees, hey, we want you to stay, you're free to move. But if the culture and the tools aren't there to help, you may be accelerating people walking out the door. So I think about this like if recruitment is sales to get candidates in, to get talent into your company, these are the pillars for customer, or in this case, employee success. So let's dig into what these are and how to embrace them. So the first, self-direction, right? Employees need the tools and permission to be self-directed. Most people are driven to advance in their career. They just don't know how. So for many, the internal application process is still the external job board. And they've already been hired, and being treated like someone the organization doesn't know isn't a great experience, right? If we put our product and user experience hats on. And there's an investment made in development programs and learning systems. This isn't for lack of effort, but these are usually disconnected. And again, like I think a lot of times learning systems start with skills, which is great. But if someone doesn't know where they want to go, like skills isn't the first thing we should be starting with. We need to be starting with the destination, right? So we're really putting a big cognitive load on employees to figure this out and how to kind of piece it all together. So right now, it's just for many employees, it's too easy to respond to an external recruiter to advance or then do something different within their own organization, right? And the way I think about this again as a product person is, just think of all the things you interact with, throughout your day. Like every part of an employee's life is personalized. Careers have to be as well. And right now, HR tools and that whole experience are not there. So what employees need here is a GPS system that actually lets them drive. They need to understand the destinations they can go to, all the possible futures. And then they need a set of kind of step-by-step instructions, which there could be multiple paths to help them get to that destination. So that kind of takes us to the next piece, right? We need other ingredients here. Like self-direction doesn't get it done alone. So let's dig into the tools themselves. So the GPS system we just talked about. This really starts with visibility and findability. So the 56% stat here, this is, again, I think everyone knows this, but we're saying it out loud. A lot of employees don't even know where to look for their next role if it's not above them. And again, thinking about this, right? For many, search isn't a good mode for finding things if you don't know what something's called. Like a job board assumes someone knows what they're looking for. And for many, particularly like early in their careers, they don't. It's almost like my career has been a process of, kind of figuring out what I didn't want to do my first 8 or 9 years out in the workforce. And process elimination is not a great way to build a career. So, these tools, they've got to include the full-time jobs, but they also have to include the development opportunities, and they need to be tied to the career paths themselves as a navigational device. So really what happens here is those skill and experience gaps employees identify through comparing themselves to open roles are their development plans. So this doesn't rely on HR teams figuring out every permutation of skills transferability between roles in different job families. Like that would be an impossible task. It's hard enough to keep those ladders up to date themselves. But this is what software and AI unlock, right? Those gaps can then be actioned upon through targeted learning or applied development like gigs or assignments. So this becomes the place where employees go when they're curious about what's available. And a lot of times this happens way earlier kind of in the journey than when they're ready to make a move yet. They just want to know what's there. And once they're frustrated or they're starting to think about, shifting from where they're currently at, they know where to go. So tools that enable this level of self-direction and holistic representation drive employee engagement. And that engagement drives better data collection around both what someone's done, but also what they want to do, right? This is about potential. So this means better data collection that the business then can also make decisions from, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here. So this makes everything transparent and actionable, which is critical. Employees stay when there's a perception that opportunities are available. And we actually poll people throughout engagement points in our platform, and we found this to be like resoundingly true. So, but I think that the other point here to kind of drill in on is, this isn't just visibility, it's also how we evaluate people and how we consider them. And a lot of the talk right now is skills. Skills are important. It's a common currency. It's something we can evaluate people on and understand, but it's not just about skills and experiences, right? It's also working styles, interests, motivations. What does somebody want to do, right? People can close gaps very quickly sometimes when they're very motivated to do so. So if we look at all of these things in totality, this actually leads to employees who are good in the seat and not just good on paper. So when I think about this, all of this information leads to helping hire employees who, kind of can holistically evaluate themselves for opportunities, which is important. There's a lot of studies that show major gender differences and differences with underrepresented communities in being willing to even raise your hand for a job, right? If we just use keywords as qualifications, Deloitte ran a study years ago. I'm kind of, fudging this a bit, but kind of roughly, they ran this study for years, and what they found was, looking at willingness to apply, it took men being about 60% qualified to raise their hand, and it took women needing to be about 95%. Again, I need to find the study and post it, but that's kind of the rough anecdote. But again, if all the skills listed on a job description are really required, aren't really required and could be learned quickly on the job, think about all the amazing diverse talent you're missing out on if we're just checking those boxes. And then the last piece here that's important is obviously the culture, right? We need a culture that doesn't just support the movement, it needs to be able to celebrate it. And this was actually in the earlier poll, and I think actually the top answer here, like we get asked a lot about manager protectionism. Doesn't this just make it easier for managers to poach other people? And it's a fair question, but I don't think it's the right way to think about this. As hard as it might be to have someone leave your team, at a minimum, as a shareholder in the company, it's better that they stay at your company than go to a competitor. And that's just the hard truth. But if you look beyond that, it's understanding that the same system that enabled someone to move to their next role in another team will also enable someone to move into your team. And again, think about how this plays out. These transitions, when that happens, can actually be planned. So there's time to adjust, right? We can say, all right, this is happening next quarter. This is part of your career progression here. And then we can start a process to bring somebody in, which is far, far easier than getting, someone coming in and handing in their 2 weeks and everything being reactive, right? So this is really needing to change how we think about this. This is a interconnected system that we can promote and support if it's healthy. So this means we need our hiring managers to be enablers. And as these new paths emerge, hiring managers need to understand how to evaluate candidates from, quote unquote, atypical backgrounds, not just by hiring the same historical profiles. And hiring is a pattern matching process for those who have done a lot of it, right? And people hire historically what has worked for them. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But diversity isn't just about demographics. It's also about differences in experiences. So in many cases, there's nothing wrong with hiring profiles are successful. I myself, I've hired probably over 100 product managers in my career at this point, and I know what a good PM looks like. But I've also learned that sales engineers make amazing product managers. And if you break down what a typical sales engineer does, right, they interface with customers, they diagnose business and technical needs, they work with product and engineering to close those gaps, and they coordinate with other teams to find alternate solutions if the product can't or won't do it. In my book, that sounds like a product manager, right? And I can teach you how to write a spec or a business case if you can do those core things. So, when I've thought about this, when I've had kind of the stress of building large teams in very competitive markets, the thing that's easier than the thing that's faster and less expensive than convincing a PM from another company to join is actually finding an SE who wants to become a PM, right? And so if you look beyond titles and focus on what the job does and the similarity in other roles, it's amazing what you can unlock. So even like systems and tools aside, when people ask, how could I start? I can say, look, as a starting point, even with a system, take a look at the jobs and that people have in hard to hire roles in your organization and look at what the role was before they were there. And in these days, that role was probably whatever they played at another company before they were there, right now at your company. So if you look at what that path was, you may see patterns here, right? Like that SE to product manager move. And maybe it hasn't happened at your company yet, but it's absolutely something that could, right? And this is where we start kind of aiming recruiting strategy. So then the last point here that I think is important is once you've uncovered these successes, right? Even like this, these small things I'm talking about, they need to be shared across your organization. So this is not only key to get employees comfortable raising their hand, which is a huge part of this, but it's also getting the hiring managers seeing the success, right? And success is contagious. So in my experience, again, like years ago, once we had a few SEs transfer to product and become successful product managers, teams like sales, operations, these other groups around us started doing the same thing. And all of a sudden, if you resided in our services org, your career path was either several ladders that existed that you understood within your org, but it was also these paths now into these other teams where maybe at your point of joining the company, you thought that wasn't possible, right? And that's huge. So, when this happens, people stay, they perform, and they refer others. So if you can lay that foundation to kind of drive us to a bit of a conclusion here, I mean, a lot of this I could spend hours talking about. If you lay that foundation, the future becomes even easier to enable. And for me, like when I talk to people, this is the new hero story of HR. That foundation puts your business on a different and more dynamic playing field than your competition, right? You're playing chess now, not checkers. And so when I think about like what is the long-term like success story for internal mobility, this is what I think it unlocks, right? Internal mobility is the utility knife in the workforce planning tool belt. So as we uncover career paths between organizations, like sales engineer to the product manager example, we begin learning how to build the harder to hire roles in-house. So these common kind of skill and experience gaps can be closed through tailored rotation programs, projects, or learning modules that can accelerate these transitions. So you can even use these rotations for one team to upskill as a way for another team to get things done during peak work periods. Like we see this a lot in e-commerce companies. Like, all of a sudden the success people who've been manning the call lines, when they're free and underutilized, they're actually helping out in operations. And all of a sudden we've created this path for these people, which keeps them staying. They've got an amazing empathy for the customer, given the role that they played. And we're starting to both help near-term needs and also build long-term futures for what the company needs. So being smarter about what we can build means we can be smarter about what we have to go, quote unquote, buy and market through external recruiting. So the key in all of this, because it can feel overwhelming, is starting small, right? We don't need to boil the ocean. Find that transition case that you know or believe could work, identify the gaps needed for transition, and then enable those teams and celebrate it in an all hands when it happens, right? Even if it's just one move. Things will build from there. This is about progress, not perfection. And it's starting small and then building big. So that is kind of the conclusion here. I appreciate everybody listening. We've got some great questions I'll shift to in Q&A if I just bring the chat up. So the first question is, how do you see AI playing a role in shaping the future workforce? Fantastic question. We get asked this a lot. For me, when I think about this, AI is not the silver bullet that solves all our problems, but it is something that actually helps augment a lot of things that are really, really hard. So, I think a lot of people, kind of at this conference tuning in have probably dealt with or are dealing with, like, how do we manage the skills taxonomy? How do we build career architectures? How do we keep these things up to date? That is a hugely laborious task. And this is absolutely something AI can help with, right? This isn't just about matching people to the right role, which absolutely is helpful, right? How do we use intelligence to better surface people and understand who's here? And so we can spend more time on the human aspects, right? That last mile of the experience, which I don't think AI will ever solve. It shouldn't point the winner out. It should present, the people who should be considered, and then we can spend our time on, the personal aspects that really make sure that this is the right hire and it's a good fit. But it's also, in my mind, as we've been thinking about products we're building, how do we help support the infrastructure, right? The career architectures, the skills taxonomies. This doesn't have to be perfect. This should be self-maintaining and building. And this is something AI can absolutely help with. Let's see, the second question. What practical tips can you offer to engage employees working remotely? Awesome question. This is actually one of the things that I almost feel like this notion of hybrid work and everything the pandemic's created it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, we've all got this flexibility. I'm doing this webinar from home right now, and I get to spend more time with my family. But for many, that means you're not going to an office. And if there is an office and there is a culture there, you're not being seen, and you may not be able to see opportunity. And so a lot of things, we've been thinking about is like, are we creating class systems within companies? Like, I think anyone who's worked in organizations that have had an HQ and a bunch of satellite offices, if you've been in a satellite office, there's already a difference between being there and being an HQ. So, what we've done here is we've created thousands and thousands of satellite offices by allowing everybody to be remote. So, I talk to a lot of companies where, they say, look, it's great that we've been able to go hire more competitively in other markets. I don't have to hire that salesperson in Chicago. I can go hire them in Louisville right now. But the moment that person's looking for a transition, or, if it wasn't the right place for them to start, what do? Right? They're not, like, this is a visibility problem. And this is where I actually think, talent marketplaces and internal mobility is hugely helpful. Like, those employees have to have a way to connect to the company and understand what futures are, even if they can't see them. And, being remote, that's really almost kind of amplifying that problem for many. So literally what we walk through, to me, is it needs to be a core part of the employee experience now, and something that, whether you're at home or you're at headquarters, is something people need equal access to. And I think we'll make this experience work. We're in the early stages of it, where the problems have been about connection, connectivity and collaboration. But the organizational challenges are just starting to surface now 3 years into this, right? What happens with promotion? If I don't know even who's here, how do I even consider them if I want to? So again, I think all of this is really key to enabling that. It's a great question. We've got a couple minutes left, so just maybe I'll answer a few more that were posted here. So question 3, how do you suggest handling geographic challenges to internal mobility, where taxation costs and business units cost increase if someone supports a different geography? This is great. We had a customer who, through the course of the pandemic, had one business unit that became very underutilized and one that became very overutilized. And immediately they were running a gig marketplace that was just very focused on spend 10% of your time doing something else, learning a new skill or flexing a skill you have in a new context. And all of a sudden they dialed that up to say, hey, this group that's kind of underutilized right now, you can spend 100% of your time over here helping this team out. Team that's underwater, please post projects. And the whole organization just reload balanced through the core, like in a matter of days. On the end of that, though, then the taxation questions came up, and so this is where I think there needs to be some thought and rules, but we also need to kind of question some of the policies that exist, right? And it may lead to amounts of time that people can spend doing certain things based on where they're based, and there's a lot of complexity in that. What I would challenge with all of this, though, is really thinking about, there's a coordination cost that can also exist, right? So having people in similar time zones, even if they're not in the same places, there can be a huge benefit. So I think with those challenges, if they can be done well, or we can be thoughtful about maybe where we redraw the lines, there's a lot of efficiency and benefit that can actually come from that. But I think this is another thing we could spend a lot of time on. So I'm going to wrap up now because I know we're running out of time. But I appreciate everyone joining, and our information's here along with my email. I would love to follow up off the conference if there's questions or things we could continue chatting about. And thanks for the time. And I'll hand it back to Vicky Lynn.
Thank you, Nick. Wow, that was very practical and insightful. Thank you for that. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this incredible thought leadership. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Thank you again, Nick.